Hello and welcome to another edition of Power of the Pen. I am LaWanna Bradford and I'm excited to be joining you today for a very special edition in the aftermath of an amazing celebration yesterday, Buffalo Soldier Day. And today I am actually live with you. This is Black Wings Over Arizona. Black Wings Over Arizona by retired Colonel Richard Toliver. And it includes just amazing stories of our Black men and women who served during World War II. And it includes women of the 6888 Central Postal Directory Battalion. So many of you are familiar with the movie, The 6888 by Tyler Perry, which elevated and brought to the limelight the story of these courageous women in the height of segregation and discrimination and of America and the American military, and their roles in helping to improve morale with the backlog of the postal system. And there's much, much more about their stories. But again, they are also included in this beautifully researched tapestry of African-American history and impact during World War II, the 15,000 men and women who served. And also it's quite interesting to learn about the intersect during that time in history. That point in time in history, there was an intersect in Europe of the Tuskegee Airmen, the Buffalo Soldiers, and the 6888 women. Quite amazing. So again, this is a great book to have if you're a history buff or you just want to uncover and unpackage more of the truth of history of the history of the marginalized communities, to see the history as told through the lens of individuals who not only lived it, but who are descendants of those whose shoulders we stand on. If you want to know more, and again, spotlight history, understand fact from fiction, from again, perspectives of those who lived it. This is one of those books. Colonel Richard Toliver, retired U.S. Air Force. And we will be right back, and I'll give you a little bit more about the amazing and brilliant mind of Colonel Toliver, the work that he's doing, his advocacy, and how you can follow him and have him perhaps be a part of your event, or just connect with him, have a conversation, and get the book. Be a part of helping to preserve history, shape the narrative, or reshape the narrative for the next generation to come. We'll be back in a moment. All right, we are back. We are back for this amazing discussion. I am LaWanna Bradford here with Power of the Pen, and we are going to talk about Black Wings Over Arizona, including women of the 6888 Central. Let me get this right. Let me hide this. Got a little typo here, and that's okay because we are live. 6888 Central Postal Directory Battalion. And this is by Colonel Richard Toliver, So I'm excited. We actually had another show slated for today, but because of what happened yesterday, again, the celebration of Buffalo Soldier Day, I'm like, okay, I'm going to have to come on live, do another episode. We're definitely going to bring back the episode that was scheduled for today. But sometimes it's about having things in real time when they're happening and to celebrate those stories. And I am just, as I'm here talking to you right now, I want to make sure that I notify all of those who might be watching us from other platforms. We're joining you from E360 TV right now, but perhaps you're watching us on Facebook or LinkedIn. So I just want to make sure that you are connected and are able to view this in real time. So just excuse us for one moment so we make sure everything is set, and it looks like it is. And so we will get right into this book. All right. Well, as I mentioned, this book is an amazing anthology and collection of brilliant and beautiful stories of lives we may not have even heard about. And one of the things that you hear me talk about when it comes to our history, we right now are living history. One day someone will tell our stories, hopefully, right? So, but while we're here, my question is, how involved are you in understanding the stories around you, your family stories, translating that so that the next generation can learn and grow and expand from them? It's one thing when we understand and know, maybe I know the name or I know what they did, but do we know the heartbeat and the pulse and the energy behind these individuals and why they did what they did and the impact that they had perhaps in their families, the communities, the nation, and even the world? And that's what this book goes into. Why Arizona? Because Colonel Toliver actually lives in Litchfield Park, Arizona. And he realized that there were a lot of men and women who have served, African-American women, men and women who've served in World War II, who have roots and ties in Arizona. And he thought, what a wonderful way to weave a collective experience based on a shared platform of Arizona and translate it to the world. And as I mentioned previously, this is the first time in history during World War II in Europe where the Buffalo Soldiers, the Tuskegee Airmen, and the women of the 688 were there at the same time. Pretty remarkable. So I want to tell you something that Colonel Toliver put in this book, and then we'll go over a couple of slides. In fact, let me just bring this up right now as we go into it. So this is the cover of the book, Black Wings Over Arizona, and you can see the historical figures there. He says that this book is in dedication of the heroic contributions of Black men and women in the development, growth, and progress of America. That they have been woven into our soil, the very fabric of this country, since the American Revolution 248 years ago. He says their blood, sweat, and tears have been drenched in the battlefields of every major conflict since then. Thus, the original roots of the Tuskegee Airmen story can rightfully be declared a great part of American history. He talks about a speech by the great Negro statesman and orator Frederick Douglass. And he says that he underscored that truth in the not only the hope of America, but the hope of African Americans as a people. Now, Booker T. Washington, who was the founder of Tuskegee Institute, as well as the Tuskegee Airmen, says this. And he talks about that we are standing on the shoulders of giants who have paved paths that will enable Black people to reach unprecedented heights. And I quote, Black people have plowed, planted, and reaped from the soils of America. We have erected houses, constructed bridges, built ships, and worked in the factories. We are readers, writers, clerks, and secretaries. We are lawyers, doctors, ministers, poets, authors, editors, orators, and teachers. We engage in all manners of business enterprises. We are moving, acting, thinking, planning, living in families as husbands, wives, and children. Above all, we worship the Christian's God, and we look hopefully to life beyond the grave. So this book, again, is speaking to the hope and to the promise that these men and women fought for, bled for, in some cases died for. And I thought that in this book, it celebrates the patriotism. It celebrates us as Americans. It celebrates the roles that men and women play in the shaping of our families, in the shaping of our communities, the nation, and the world. And I, again, encourage you, if you're someone who's into history, want to learn a little bit more, unpackage these stories as told from the perspective of an individual who is, let me read this, a protégé of the famed Tuskegee Airmen and 26-year veteran of the U.S. Air Force with 2 combat tours and 446 missions in Southeast Asia. Colonel Toliver is a staunch community activist who served on governing boards of hospitals, universities, and numerous business and political organizations. He continues to be on demand as a motivational speaker nationwide and overseas. So again, this is someone to get to know, to find out how you can be a part of the collective effort that is that is working to shift the narrative, tell the stories as experienced by those who lived it and from the lens of those who've experienced it. Well, I am going to continue to move on with this amazing presentation. So this is Colonel Toliver standing in front of one of the planes that he flew. And here he is. This is from yesterday's event celebrating Buffalo Soldiers Day. And you have Sergeant Major Charles there to the right, and my mother, Bessie Bradford, to his left. My mother was celebrated for a Lifetime Achievement Award for her participation in preserving history and celebrating and guiding our young troops in conjunction with all the efforts of the Southwest Association of Buffalo Soldiers. So this was a real exciting moment. And when I look at the generations here, right, that we happen to be standing before yesterday, and I want to give Mr. Charles his full name. I call him Mr. Charles, but it is Sergeant Major retired U.S. Army Charles Hancock, who spends countless hours researching, telling the story of African-American history, the history of the Buffalo Soldier, military history, writing our congressmen and representatives to make sure that the history is preserved. And that's what the Southwest Association of Buffalo Soldiers is all about. So if you want to know more about them, please check them out. You can Google them and go to their website, Southwest Association of Buffalo Soldiers. And you don't have to be in Arizona to participate. You can do so virtually as well. And of course, I had to have my photo op moment with Colonel Toliver. And again, it was just an honor and a privilege. I have never met a real Tuskegee Airman, and the fact that this is as close as I'm going to get to meeting someone who was trained by them, and to hear his story. And during a time when life was very difficult for African Americans here in this country, and there are still these ongoing difficulties of African Americans and other marginalized people within the borders of our amazing United States of America. And we are collectively coming together to rise up in truth about our stories, to take back the narrative and truth of our stories so that we can live with pride, live in harmony, and realize that collectively the United States of America is the great nation that it is because of all the complexions, the shades, and as author Cornelia Brown often says, the flavors of the beautiful tapestry that's within the United States of America. As I said, people were just coming all around him. They wanted to see him. They wanted to touch him. They wanted to talk to him. They wanted to get their copy of this book, and many did. So it's a great thing. I obviously couldn't read it from cover to cover before yesterday, but I did read some key parts of this, and it is an amazingly crafted manuscript. So I encourage you all to get the book. And let's go to the next one here. There's my mother, and he is having a conversation with her. And you can't really hear it well, so I'm not going to play it because there's a lot of audio distortion because there was so much noise happening around him. But this is where it is so powerful. You never know who's watching you. You never know how your work, your successes can be celebrated by other people. So in him listening to the story about my mother and the recognition that she was getting as an honoree of the 2025 Southwest Association of Buffalo Soldier Lifetime Achievement Award for over 30 years of dedication in this organization. He said, I'm writing this other anthology highlighting great women. And he put my mother and Coretta Scott King and other brilliant women all in the same sentence. And he says, I want you in this book. I want to interview you. I want to bring your story to life in this book. And that's what he's discussing with her in the video clip on the right, which again, I can't play for you because the audio is not as clear as I'd like it to be. But how exciting is that? I'm sitting there listening and hearing this man celebrate my mother and saying, I love your story and I want it to be told. I want it to be chronicled, forever and ever in history. And so that was something that's great and amazing. And again, you don't have to wait for someone like a Colonel Toliver to come to you and say, hey, I want to package your story. You can do that right now. You can record your story. You can tell your story. You can write your story right now. You can get it done. So a lot of exciting moments yesterday. And again, it was such an honor to be there. And we will be right back for the continuation of this amazing book, Black Wings over Arizona. Just a moment. I am back, and we are here discussing this amazing man that you see on the screen, Colonel U.S. Air Force retired, Richard Toliver, for his book, Black Wings over Arizona. And again, celebrating the history of African Americans and their experience. And before we go into this, I want to show you my book that was debuted publicly at the event yesterday.
From a segregated military to modern movements for justice, this book uplifts the stories often left in the margins. With a rare blend of poetic grace and historical insight, Bradford moves beyond retelling American ideals. She reimagines them through the lived lens of those too often pushed to the margins. Black women who carried burdens and dreams, indigenous ancestors whose sacred truths still echo, immigrant allies who stood shoulder to shoulder in faith and sacrifice, and unsung patriots who, despite betrayal, still believed in the promise of America. I pledge allegiance is a love letter to resilience, a reckoning with history, and a call to rise, not with bitterness, but with clarity, conviction, and hope. It's a reminder that patriotism is not silence, it is speaking truth while holding the flag in one hand and faith in the other.
All right, you can get a copy of my book, I Pledge Allegiance, available on Amazon, both Kindle as well as paperback. And I was just beyond the moon for this amazing intersect where, again, at Buffalo Soldier Day, to be celebrating my mother for her Lifetime Achievement Award for her work with the Buffalo Soldier, giving a shout out to the past efforts of my father, the late Sergeant Major Harlan Bradford, and to again be celebrating my books at this event. And all proceeds of this book, forever and ever, will be donated to the Southwest Association of Buffalo Soldiers and their celebration of African American history, U.S. military history, the history of the Buffalo Soldiers, and the history of the United States. and all contributions will be sent to help expand our efforts, again, shifting the narrative and preserving our history. Well, before we go into a deeper dive in this book, as I said that we're going to do, I want you to hear from the man of the hour himself. I apologize in advance if the quality wasn't that great, because we're recording him and he couldn't be dual mic'd because of the back feed. But I want you to lean into a piece that he says. This is a 5-minute clip, and then we're going to get into that portion that he speaks about, which is the women of the 688, as written in this book, Black Wings Over Arizona. We'll be right back.
Thank you so much, Ms. Warren. There's so many people, so many achievers here today that I hardly feel worthy to come behind you. And I'm going to start with the lady that's on fire. I wanted to get up and dance with you, but I thought that might be inappropriate. But I think you represent all that has been said here today. The men and women that make up our history. And I'm going to do this. I think I can do this. And I want to get a little closer. I like to get a little closer to people I talk to. And I want to be able to talk to what you want to see. But let me say this. This is a God-made place. Fort Huachuca, the history of the Buffalo Soldiers, the history of the Tuskegee Airmen, and the history of 855 black women who were sent overseas in 1945 to help unscramble the mill. When my wife Peggy and I drove down, and I've been here a few times, every time I come to Fort Huachuca, I'm filled with the history of those who went before me, and they paved the road. Only those who travel the road know what it means, the trials and the tribulations, the struggles. And by the way, everybody has had some of those. There's not a person in here that has not had a challenge in life. And if you're like me, you've grown to be able to say, I'm thankful for the blood and sweat and tears that I shed. I'm thankful that I had some dark days. I'm thankful that I learned how to overcome adversity. I'm thankful for the tears I shed, the battles I fought, the missions I flew. Because whatever I was to be, I was becoming during that time. And sometimes I would say to those who led the way, why didn't you make my road a lot smoother? And he said, Toliver, stop it, Whitey. We wanted you to have an opportunity to have some character built. So we left a few rocks for you. We left a few ditches for you. And we probably left some things that we didn't have to deal with, but we knew that you were going to come along and you were going to need that experience. So when I stand before you today, in honor of these great American patriots, I have spent time over the past few weeks revealing the history that I already knew, but renewing or making anew my appreciation of what these men did and the women. So I'm going to take you on a journey focusing on the Buffalo Soldiers, the Tuskegee Airmen, and the women of the 688. I don't know if you all knew that okay, thank you. I don't know if you all knew that all three of these groups of people were serving in Europe at the same time. I don't know if you knew that the 855 black women were unscrambling the mail in England and in France. At the same time, the Buffalo Soldiers were coming up the peninsula of Italy. You're going to see one or two of the names here. Some of them gave their lives, Buffalo Soldiers, to help win the war. And the Tuskegee Airmen happened to be flying out of Italy at the same time. So you have these three groups of Americans, great patriots, serving our nation to make us free by putting down the imperialism of the Nazis in Europe at the same time.
That was amazing to hear, as I mentioned earlier, that these three, the Buffalo Soldiers, the Tuskegee Airmen, and the 855 women of the 6888 were all in Europe at the same time. That they were like the perfect storm to help support the war effort, to help secure freedom during World War II. I want to just sit in on the story about the 6888. And we will get into that in just a moment, because I want to talk to you about Lieutenant Colonel Charity Adams Earley, who was over that battalion. And the movie, for those of you who watched 6888 by Tyler Perry, and the role of Lieutenant Earley was played by Kerry Washington. It gave you some insight about the work that she did, but I don't recall it going into the deep detail of who she was and all that she had accomplished before that point in history. And that's what I want to sit in on this book for a moment, because again, we can tell pieces of the story, but when we're able to pull different breadcrumbs together and see it in whole, it gives us a whole different perspective and respect for the individuals who we call the giants, right? Whose shoulders we stand on. We'll be back in just a moment, and we'll talk about Lieutenant Colonel Charity Earley from the book Black Wings Over Arizona by Colonel Richard Toliver.
Power of the Pen with LaWanna Bradford, expanding the impact and influence of authors from around the world. If you want to change the world, pick up your pen and write, said Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Books are uniquely portable magic. Power of the Pen spotlights authors from around the world. Listen as authors share messages that educate, motivate, inspire, and entertain. Join us each Sunday at 2 p.m. Eastern on e360tv.com.
Hello, and welcome back to Power of the Pen. I'm LaWanna Bradford, and thank you so much for joining us for this special live edition of Power of the Pen. We are coming on the heels of celebrating Buffalo Soldier Day yesterday. I had the opportunity to actually meet the author of the book that we were featuring, Black Wings Over Arizona, Colonel Richard Toliver, and I just thought, let's keep this thing in as real time as possible. Let's bring the show to the forefront, talk about this book, help you understand the greater narrative and scope and impact that African Americans had within the war effort and continue to have in the shaping and building of this great nation, the United States of America. Again, celebrating the lives of the Tuskegee Airmen, the Buffalo Soldier, and the women of the 6888. And I am going to read to you a portion about Charity Adams, Lieutenant Colonel Charity Adams Earley of the 6888. As I said, the movie by Tyler Perry began with her life in the military, right? It doesn't go into a lot of her backstory, but I want to talk to you about this. It says, Charity Adams, she was the oldest of 4 children, and she was born in 1918 in Cottrell, North Carolina, and grew up in Columbia, South Carolina. Both her parents believed strongly in education, and they believed that it was the path that Black people could overcome the crippling obstacles of racial segregation. And within the African American communities, education is something that is very important, is celebrated as the way to open up other pathways of opportunity. Charity's father was a college graduate and an African Methodist Episcopal minister and her mother was a school teacher. So when you think back in the time that she was born, look at the lanes that her parents were in. The intersect, and we are a sum of our lived experiences, our primary and secondary socialization from our parents or the environment that we're in. And from that, we can shape and shift our lives into whatever it is we choose to be, in spite of limitations, in spite of restrictions. Does it mean that the path is not going to be difficult, that we may not navigate landmines? No, that's not what it's saying. But sometimes, and this is one of the things that Colonel Toliver spoke about in that little clip that I played earlier, is the challenges and the hardships that you go through. And when the future generations are able to look back and see what you did and see the barriers, see the fact that you were able to take the chaos and create opportunity, that you were able to translate those stumbling blocks into stepping stones, that gives hope, that gives courage, that infuels that passion and that fire to keep pressing forward. So she graduated from Booker T High School as a valedictorian in 1934. And it's interesting, I was thinking, wow, 1934, in the heart of the Depression, and my father was only 4 years old and my mother was not yet born. Mom came 2 years after that. She finished Wilberforce University in Ohio in 1938 with a major in math and physics. Charity returned to Columbia, where she taught mathematics at the local high school. In the meantime, she studied part-time for her Master's of Science in Psychology at Ohio State University, and she graduated with that honor in 1946. So I think it's just really important for you to look at not only the foundation that had been set for her by her parents and the encouragement that they gave her, right? But she herself had this level of discipline and commitment to becoming. And we all each have that within ourselves. We can choose to commit to our dreams and our visions and do the work to move us closer, or we can choose to sit on the sideline and complain about what's not happening or life isn't fair, and focus on the challenges and the struggles rather than saying, okay, what are the opportunities? How might I be able to rise up in spite of? What can I create for myself in this space and time? And that's what she did. Adams enlisted in the U.S. Army's Women Army Auxiliary Corps, WAC, in July 1942. So remember, we were talking about the segregated army. My father joined in 1948, and the military was still segregated and became desegregated later that year by Harry S. Truman through writing into law about the desegregation of the military. But my father was explaining to me the ramifications of that effort was not fully felt until about 4 years later. So she joined when it was still segregated. So she was placed in a company with fellow female Black officers stationed at Fort Des Moines, Iowa. And we saw that in the film. And I really, as I was reading this and thinking about on the movie, it stayed very true to the storyline of her life, of Colonel Charity Adams Earley's life. In 1943, she was assigned to the training supervisor as a training supervisor at the base headquarters. And in early 1944, she was reassigned to the training center control officer in charge of improving efficiency in job training. So that's really important. Think about that. What they were assigned to do, this seemingly impossible task of the bottlenecked postal system. I mean, they were sent there to fail. They weren't sent with the hope that, oh, they can do this. So keep that in mind. They were sent thinking this is basically a suicide mission, because they're not gonna be able to survive this. They're not gonna even be able to do this. But because of her training to help improve efficiency and job training, think about how that skill set and knowledge translated to her ability to be able to guide the troops who are under her authority. She had additional duties as the officer in charge, finding lost property and handling minor women's offenses. In December 1944, she was promoted to major and selected to lead the only company of black wax scheduled for deployment overseas. The unit was designated the 6888 Central Postal Directory Battalion. In 1945, early 1945, she, along with Captain Noel Campbell, her executive officer, were flown ahead to London, England, to begin preparation for yet an undefined task. So she knew she was going. They were excited. They had done all this training, gotten the women ready. And then they're wondering, well, what am I going to do? So over 850 black officers and enlisted women were expected to arrive in 1945, and they did. They arrived in Glasgow, Scotland on February 12, 1945, and transported to Birmingham, England on February 15th. Then it was there that she was informed by the senior executive of the theater commanders that the battalion would be expected to stand for inspection and march in review upon arrival. So think about this long journey. You get there and you're expected to stand for inspection and then march all the way in. And the movie captured that. She and the 6888 faced an extraordinary task of getting settled, and they had to be organized in an extremely poor living and working conditions. Remember Glasgow, right? It's cold. It was wet, and it compounded their challenge of establishing a modicum of human comfort. They had to wear coats and extra clothing when working in unheated temporary buildings. They waded through over 17 million backlogged pieces of mails and packages that were affecting millions of individuals and their morales throughout the theater. Under the creative and effective leadership of Major Adams, the women of the 6888 rose to the challenge. And I want you to just sit there right now and imagine, even if you saw the movie, think about that. Think about the conditions that you're in. You're away from home. You're in a foreign environment. You have the most deplorable living conditions imaginable. You're cold, and you're having to rise up every day and do this seemingly impossible task. But yet you're under leadership that saw the hope and the possibility in the women who she was responsible for, saw the hope and possibility in that we can overcome this challenge. We can meet this mission. We will exceed this mission. We're not going to say we can't. We're going to find a way to do. We're going to find a way to say, yes, we can. And these stories, as written by and retold by Colonel Richard Toliver in Black Wings over Arizona, are stories of inspiration and hope and encouragement for all of us. No matter what your shade or complexion or background is, we can find hope and inspiration in understanding how people overcame, how people pressed through despite the obstacles, despite the landmines that were placed in their paths. They found a way to navigate around them. So it says, despite the unnecessary and sometimes troublesome interference of white superior officers, and the movie touched on to that, where they were trying to trip them up. You know, they were showing a little bit of momentum, a little bit of success. It's like, we can't have that because you weren't sent here to succeed. Remember that. So think about, again, I'm placing you in the situation of the day, a segregated army, racial environment, heavy discrimination, in a foreign war, in another country, in deplorable living conditions, assigned to one of the most impossible tasks, commanded by a woman in leadership. The only Black woman battalion in the theater, and they rose to the challenge. The women worked 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, in 3 shifts, processing and delivering the mail. Their creativity, dedication, and Herculean efforts in handling 65,000 pieces of mail per shift. 65,000 pieces of mail per shift. So you think about today, our modern mail system, right? And having all the technology to help sort the mail, read the codes, and send it to the respective areas. They didn't have that. And the movie really captured the challenge. How were they able to place the pieces of mail in the right slots to get to the right people? How did they do that? But they did. It resulted in an immediate improvement in the morale of the troops fighting in Europe. They expected 6 months task, because they were given 6 months to do the impossible. They completed it in 3 months. 3 months. Think about it. Think about today, you in the workplace, whatever odds you're facing, and you're complaining because the system isn't working fast enough, meaning your technology system, your computer system, whatever it is, isn't working fast enough. Imagine if all of that was stripped away. What level of resilience would you have? What level of innovation would you be able to put in place to still complete the task? Right? To still complete the task, because our systems today are built upon proven processes of the past. Again, systems today are built upon proven processes. So as I said, the expected 6-month task was concluded in 3 months. Moreover, Major Adams managed to keep the morale of the battalion high by providing homegrown beauty and recreation facilities for the women. And remember, you saw that in the movie where they're getting their hair done. They're able to work out and feel good about themselves. And the white officers are like, what is this stuff? We don't like this stuff here. But sometimes when we're in leadership, when we're in authority, when we're working with individuals and helping to guide them and creating engagement and improving morale, we have to do some extra things to improve morale, to show I see you, I hear you, I appreciate you. And if this little piece of feeling good about yourself, this little tiny moment of beautification can help you wake up the next day and be a part of the 65,000 per shift piecemeal distribution, then isn't it worth it? Isn't it worth it? In May 1945, the backlog had been eliminated. And so then they were ordered to be deployed again. So they completed the task. They were deployed across the English Channel to Le Havre, France, where they were transported to Rouen, a city in Upper Normandy. And this time, the male backlog that they had to deal with was 3 years. 3 years of efforting. That's how backlogged it was. But they were still hard at work, sorting and delivering mail to the troops, even when the war in Europe ended. The Allied forces had defeated Nazi Germany, and victory in Europe, VE Day, was declared Tuesday, May 8th, 1945. Nevertheless, the 688 remained in Rouen, clearing the mail logjam in France until October 1945. Think about that. Think about what, again, I'm just reading one little piece of story out of this amazing book, Black Wings Over Arizona, just a small piece of the many stories in this book about Black history, Black presence in the military, our Tuskegee Airmen, our Buffalo Soldier, and now the women of the 688. How exciting is that? I'm going to do a quick takeaway and show you again how you can get a copy of my book, I Pledge Allegiance, A Journey Through the World, through the Words That Shaped the Nation, currently available on Amazon, has been a top bestseller of new releases under history of race and ethnic relations. We're so excited about that. We're also excited about the fact that all proceeds of this book go to support preserving our history, telling our story. It's about legacy building, and it's to support the Southwest Association of Buffalo Soldiers. We'll be right back.
From a segregated military to modern movements for justice, this book uplifts the stories often left in the margins. With a rare blend of poetic grace and historical insight, Bradford moves beyond retelling American ideals. She reimagines them through the lived lens of those too often pushed to the margins. Black women who carried burdens and dreams, indigenous ancestors whose sacred truths still echo, immigrant allies who stood shoulder to shoulder in faith and sacrifice, and unsung patriots who, despite betrayal, still believed in the promise of America. I Pledge Allegiance is a love letter to resilience, a reckoning with history, and a call to rise, not with bitterness, but with clarity, conviction, and hope. It's a reminder that patriotism is not silence, it is speaking truth while holding the flag in one hand and faith in the other.
You can get a copy of my book, I Pledge of Allegiance, on Amazon. I'm going to put this here so you can see, Amazon.com. I want to thank everyone who has supported this work. It is truly has been a work of passion to have us challenge our belief system, to have us recognize when indoctrination has happened and what these thousands and thousands of impressions, if you've said the Pledge of Allegiance over and over again, from being itty bitty all the way up, what does it mean? How has it impacted your life from a subconscious standpoint? It takes you through the journey of asking yourself from each stanza of the pledge a series of questions. It is a book where I had to unpackage some truths for myself, to where at the end of the day, when I got to the end of writing this book, I could say, I can still place my hand over my heart and say, I still pledge allegiance. Now, where you may end up in your journey, I'm not certain. And that's what's so beautiful about this book, is the conclusion of this book. This is where it's unique, will not be the same for anyone. Why? Because your lens is just that. It is your lens. It is your lived experience that is going to translate how you interpret this journey through a Pledge Allegiance. And what you come up with may complement where I arrived. It may not. But the one thing that's beautiful, it's your truth, your understanding. And I guarantee you, in reading it, you will be transformed, if only a little bit, because it will cause you to have more introspection and more consciousness in when you pledge things, when you put your word out, and realizing the power of the spoken word and how it can shape and influence your life and the life of others. Well, let's get back to this close, because we're almost out of time. I just want to encourage you, if you've enjoyed this episode and other episodes, and you're an author who would like to feature your message and your book on this platform, Empower the Pen, please email me at LaWanna@BradfordGroupMTG.com. You can DM me on all things social media. We will reach out to you, invite you to an information session so that you can understand our platform and make sure that it's a win-win for everyone. You want to email guests to LaWanna Bradford, LaWanna@BradfordGroupMTG.com, or reach out to me directly, LaWanna Bradford. And we would love to have you as a guest on the show. Also, if you've someone that has been inspired by a book and you want this book to be featured, or you want to talk about how this book has changed your life, we want to hear you too, because this book is about spotlighting readers, right? Because we read books and they influence and they shift and they change our lives, just like seeing that great movie and you want to share it with the world. This is a platform that can do that for you. So let's get back to Black Wings over Arizona. I'm just going to read to you this last little bit. There's much more to read about the work that Lieutenant Colonel Charity Adams Earley did as part of the 688. Remember, I told you the war was over, but they remained clearing the mail logjam in France until October 1945. However, the first time since their deployment, they received first-class treatment. So remember, I told you about the deplorable conditions when they first started. But now by 1945, they get first-class treatment. They marched to the city. They were housed in luxury hotels with the creature comforts. By October 1945, the mail in ruin had been cleared, and the battalion was reduced from 855 to 300. And they began to redeploy back to America. By February 1946, the entire 688 was disbanded and discharged at Fort Dix, New Jersey. Now, keep in mind, they were disbanded and discharged at Fort Dix, New Jersey. But hear this: without any public celebration or government recognition for the amazing job these great patriots had accomplished. And I want to end it right there. And that's why telling our story, shifting the narrative, getting away from the whitewashed packaging of the lived experience of marginalized communities, and celebrating ourselves in a way that the stories, the truth of the stories, start to transcend generations, that we begin to remember these great women of the 688. We begin to celebrate the courage and the determination, that even though they are no longer here, their generations, their subsequent generations are still here. So we can still applaud, we can still lift them up, we can still celebrate, right? We don't have to say, well, oops, that was a missed opportunity. It is never a missed opportunity to celebrate greatness, to celebrate innovation, to celebrate the rise of the human spirit and dignity in the face of trials, in the face of tribulation. So think about that. These African-American women trained for the military, taken from their home, given what they thought was an impossible task, rising up not only once, but doing it twice. And doing so in a sense of community, with respect, with dignity, with pride, and with love for this country, even though the country did not seem to love them back. Think about that. So with that, we're going to sign off. I encourage you, get the book here. I'm going to put it up here for you to see it one more time. Black Wings Over Arizona, including women of the 688 Central Postal Directory. Again, there's numerous stories in here. It's a great read by Colonel Richard Toliver. And if you want to be a guest on the Power of the Pen, please reach out. We'd love to have you. Love to have you a part of this platform to hear your perspective, your message, your book, or spotlight that book that has inspired you as a reader. And with that, we want to say thank you so much for joining us for a special live edition of Power of the Pen in celebration of Buffalo Soldier Day and celebrating the amazing Tuskegee Airmen protégé, Colonel retired U.S. Air Force, Richard Toliver, and his book, I'll show you once again, Black Wings Over Arizona. Definitely worth getting in your library. If you're a history buff, military buff, just want to support shifting the narrative, pique your own curiosity, it's definitely a wonderful read and you will not regret it. Until next week, we look forward to seeing you on another edition of Power of the Pen. And just remember that in life and in business, when your vision intersects with opportunity, success is inevitable. Until next time, be safe, be well. Bye for now.